Hi everyone and welcome to another episode of Beckman's Breakdown, the show where I take a look at all of the BWF events on the World Tour from Super 500 all the way up to Super 1000, including the majors and the team events. And occasionally I will talk about other events outside the BWF, like the one I was involved with recently, BXL. But back to the BWF World Tour. This week we saw the Arctic Open Super 500, the first in 4 events, 4 consecutive weeks, where we're going to see the badminton players in action at events that are Super 500 and above. It's going to be a very busy time, a very testing and taxing time for the players, and I think it's going to be quite interesting which events some of the players are going to play. We saw some of the world's best this week, obviously in Finland at the Arctic Open. Obviously the next 2 tournaments, Denmark and France, are Super 750s, so we're going to see all the top players most likely playing those. And then at the end we have the Hilo Open, which I think we'll probably see the ones that played the Arctic won't play the Hilo, and the ones that possibly didn't play Arctic will play Hilo. And I think the only other way we're going to see anyone else not doing that, we might see some players like Chou Tien Chen playing all 4. That guy just can't stop playing tournaments. But I think the only other thing that's going to affect players playing certain events is if they do well. So if they haven't played Arctic, but then they played Denmark and France and they do particularly well, possibly winning one of them, and they were entered into Hilo, we'd probably see them withdraw. We see that quite frequently on the World Tour. But back to this week's Arctic Open, there is plenty to talk about. Actually, for once, there's something, as an Englishman, something very positive for English badminton, and that was that Ben Lane and Sean Vendy won their first Super 500 title. They won the men's doubles, and that was quite a big result, not just for them personally, but for English badminton. But I'll get to that in a moment. Before I crack on with this episode, as always, I want to do a quick shout out for my Beckman's Breakdown merchandise. There's still a few spots left if you want to purchase any of this that have 20% discount. I think there's 5 spaces left in terms of 5 items left, or 5 sales left, I guess might be a better way of putting it, where you can get the 20% discount. But it does have free worldwide shipping, and even when that 20% discount ends, free worldwide shipping will continue. So if you want to support the channel, support me, as well as support the guy behind Matchy Clothing who produces my merchandise, he's also a young badminton player from Holland, then you would obviously please do, then that would be absolutely amazing. But if you don't want to, also fine, just watching this video, liking the video, commenting on the video, whatever, anything, it's honestly, I really appreciate it. So if you want to get any of the merchandise, if you quite like the look of it, then click the link in the description. I'll probably pin it in a comment as well. And yeah, anyway, let's get cracking with this episode. The first thing that I really want to talk about is that I've pinpointed 3 players, well 4 I guess, because one of them is a pair, that have kind of had a breakthrough / major result at the Arctic Open. The first one I want to talk about is a French men's singles player, Arnaud Merkle. Now Arnaud Merkle reached the semi-finals here at the Arctic Open. He had an absolutely fantastic run, beating players like Kenta Nishimoto and Jason Te. And I thought he had an absolutely fantastic week. This was his first semi-final of a Super 500, so you could definitely deem it as a breakthrough. And I think obviously for him it's going to be a huge confidence boost. And I think obviously for France, for French badminton, it's yet another men's singles player that is capable of beating the world's best and getting to the latter stages of these big tournaments. Obviously you have the Popper brothers, Christo and Thomas Jr. Obviously you have Alex Lanier, and then Arnaud Merkle. And Arnaud Merkle has been there the whole time. I actually can't remember off the top of my head how old he is, but I think he sits in between Christo and Alex. So I think he's in his early 20s. I should have checked that, but that's one thing I actually don't have in my notes here. But that aside, obviously he's been having a really good time as late, actually, Arnaud. This is quite a follow-on, because last week, or it's possibly the week before, but very recently he won the Dutch Open. I think also, and he played in a tournament in Indonesia or Vietnam recently as well, and he reached the final there. So he's been having a really good time. So this is just a continuation. I know the French setup is really good, and obviously once you get a few people having lots of success, it tends to bleed into the others, and obviously Arnaud is a product of that. Now, in terms of his playing style and all that kind of stuff, he's got lovely, nice, smooth footwork, particularly for a European player. He actually reminds me, there's some real, I wouldn't be surprised if one of his favourite players growing up or someone he's taking great inspiration from, is Jan Jorgensen, the Danish player, former world #2, former world bronze medalist, All England finalist, European champion, an absolutely fantastic all-round player, and actually someone who is pretty much, we're exactly the same age. But there's some definite signs that the way that Arnaud constructs some of his rallies, certain situations, I can't think, I'm not going to kind of name specific ones because then I'll just be listing shots, but when I watch it, there's certain setups that he does which remind me of massively of Jan Jorgensen. I remember seeing Arnaud when he was very young, when his technique was a little bit more, I don't know how to quite put this, but less rigid and structured, because sometimes players as they get older, they tend to chip away at their technique, make it shorter, make it more refined, make it more compact, especially in singles, because you need that. But when he was younger, it was a little bit more free and flowing. He looked even more to me like Jan Jorgensen, who had a very kind of natural style about him. But it's the way that, one big one, if I could probably show it on the screen, is actually when he comes back from a lift into defense. He kind of lifts, he does the little cross step, and then he kind of does this like little jump like this, and it's, honest to God, it's like Jan Jorgensen is playing. So I would not be surprised if Arnaud Merkle, one of his favourite players growing up, or someone that he definitely watched a lot of, was Jan Jorgensen. It would make sense, as Jan was the top European player probably when Arnaud was probably a very young teenager, probably when he was first starting to take badminton seriously. Like I said, nice smooth footwork, good variation in attack. I like the fact that, like most players, if you want to be successful, you want to make that step up, you've got to be fearless. That's something that I remember growing up, Danish players always had in abundance. It didn't matter who they were playing. Maybe inside they were doubting whether they could win, but that never showed on the outside. And that, for me, that kind of spirit and that kind of approach always was a reason I always saw as to why they would tend to have more success. It's only one of many, and I see that in the French players. And Arnaud Merkle has that as well, so that's really good. That's going to put him in good stead if he wishes and if he wants to obviously make this step up more consistent. It's going to be hard for him. As again with most European players, good in the mid-court and coming forward. Good ability and decisiveness from that area, but it does actually lead to an area which I think that he could possibly improve upon, because like I said, good attack, good variation, good skills, good footwork. And I think that he's very good at hitting from the mid-court and pushing up, but setting up through his forehand side. So he's very strong if he can get into the mid-court and follow from, say, an attack in the front on his forehand. He's then able to apply far more pressure, and usually he's going to get into a position to finish the rally. Not so strong if he has to do that from his backhand side. I felt that from his backhand, obviously, if it's probably an easy kill, of course he can do that. You don't reach a semi or a 2-500 or win international tournaments if you can't do that. But if he's kind of in this mid-court area here, like above or slightly there from his forehand, he's able to create lots of opportunities for himself. On the backhand, I feel it's a little bit basic. There's a safe area. You could call it a safe area if an opponent's playing him, if they can push him into that spot. Of course, he can still play good shots. He can still maintain control in a rally. He can still not give away the initiative, but he's not able to apply, I think, personally, as much pressure from those situations. Whether it's a drive or whether it's a little bit of skill or deception, just to kind of throw his opponent off and create more chances to get more advantage in the rally. For me, he sets up really well and can push forward well on the forehand, but on his backhand side, I think that definitely could be something that he could develop. Another thing for Arnaud would be, and this is a balancing act, because it's something that can be good for you and can be a hindrance, and that's just the fiery competitiveness within him. I could see that he was kind of getting frustrated a lot of times. But again, understandable, because he's young, and B, obviously this was such a huge event and he wants to do so well that it can spill over. And for the most part, I saw him with that kind of like almost getting annoyed and angry at himself from round one, but he was obviously able to still win matches. So maybe it's not too much of a detriment. But again, it's something to keep mind of. Just because you're calm and composed on the outside doesn't mean that makes you mentally stronger or better in that situation. You know, players can have outbursts all the time. Sometimes that can be healthy. I don't know Arnaud personally, so maybe it's something that helps him. But I just got the sense that he's teetering. It could spill over at certain times. So obviously he's competitive. He's a fiery player. You know, he wants to do well. It's just how well can he manage those emotions moving forward. But again, all in all, what a fantastic tournament for him. Again, I can't sit here and say, yes, we're going to see plenty more of Arnaud. I do think we will. I think he's a good player. It's going to be difficult for him to shine within the French team because you've got 3 players above him that are not just really fantastic, but are having a great time as of late, or playing really well. You know, obviously with the Popper brothers and Alex Lanier. But I know obviously the Popper brothers train separately from the national team, but you've got Lanier, so Arnaud's got him. Obviously they've got great belief in Kęstutis Navickas, a Lithuanian guy who's the head coach, the men's singles coach. He's done really great things with Alex and obviously Arnaud, and there's other ones, like there's an Enegat Roy. He's another really good talent from France, and I'm trying to think of some others off my head, but I know they're there. So I know France are in a very healthy position for their men's singles. They've got a really strong squad. And obviously what they do well is that constantly I'm seeing other players come to their national setup to obviously add. And they're obviously more than willing to travel. You know, I've seen them in the Hong Kong setup, Singapore, Japan. They're willing to kind of go around to different setups, Denmark, and kind of learn and observe and all that kind of stuff. So for someone like Arnaud Merkle, he's in the perfect position. He's in a great setup. He has a coach that believes in him. He obviously believes in his coach. He's got other players around him that can lift him. And a result like this is going to give him huge confidence on top of his other amazing performances recently. So it's going to be an interesting time. Obviously, the next few tournaments, he's going to be... I'm not sure if he's actually in Denmark or France because 750s don't have qualifying. And obviously, they're going to have more of the top players there. So whether he can sneak in, I'm not entirely sure. But I guarantee we will see him most likely playing the Hilo Open at the end of this tour. But yeah, no, really good result. Another one who had obviously a fantastic result, who reached their first semi-final of this level, was Indian women's singles player Anmol Kharb. Now, she's only 18 years old. I did actually check how old she is. And that actually made me think that why isn't she playing the World Juniors, which is an under-19 event, and it's being currently held in India. I just thought that maybe they'd want her to play that. I don't know the setup in India or the selection process, all that kind of stuff. I know India has Unnati Huda, who's playing there, who's you know, even younger than Anmol, and obviously another really good talent. They've got quite a few there. But for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. Anmol Kharb did travel to Finland and she reached the semi-finals, where she did obviously come up against Akane Yamaguchi, the player who won, the current world champion, 3-time world champion. So that for me was a step too far. And whilst that was the main match I did watch of Anmol, I have seen some bits and pieces from her earlier rounds. There wasn't so much online in terms of the highlight stuff. Because I think because she's a little bit lesser of a player, she's not much of a name at the moment, that not as many people are making videos on her. But from what I watched and what I've seen her before, because Anmol Kharb, to me, when I first noticed her was last year, at the beginning of last year, when India won the Asian Women's Team Championship. She was absolutely crucial at third singles. I think she beat a player from China and beat the player from Thailand. I can't remember the name, but 2 players that were obviously much more experienced and much higher ranked than her at the time, and she was able to pull out 2 fantastic wins. Sadly, since then, actually, I think it was at the Yuba Cup, so another Women's Team Championships against China, she rolled her ankle quite badly, and I think that's why we haven't quite seen her push on, because I thought, wow, after watching her at that Asian Women's Team Championships, that obviously women's singles is incredibly hard. It's not like Sundays you can just jump in, and she would have only been just turned 17 at the time. It's not like I would have expected her to suddenly, you know, start challenging and doing the kind of results we've seen this week. But I thought we would have seen a bit more of her. But I think she has been struggling to return from that injury. And yeah, like I said, women's singles and singles in general is just tough. But here, I think this is clearly a big breakthrough result for her, reaching the semi-finals. What I really like about her, what I noticed when I saw her at that Asia Team Championships, and what obviously I've seen from her this week, is she's a great tactician, Anmol Kharb. I think from watching online, she's also incredibly smart, you know, book smart, that is, and that obviously doesn't always translate into badminton on-court smart. I've known people that are really clever players and smart on court, but in general life, not so much. And I've seen it the other way around. But Anmol Kharb seems to be someone who's got it in both, and you can see that in the way she plays. She's very thoughtful. She hasn't got like an amazingly powerful smash. She's not slow. She's quite nimble on her feet. Although I do think that's something that she can improve. She's going to have to improve the physical side just to compete in women's singles, because to be the best in the world in women's singles is just, you have to be an amazing athlete, and she's not quite there, but she is only 18. Let's not forget that. But back to what she's good at. She hasn't got an amazing smash. She's got lovely drop shots and touch. I saw especially some forehand cross drops in her earlier rounds that were leaving her opponents completely stranded. Great touch, great net play, good deceptive skills. Not someone that you're like, holy hell, it's not like a Taiji Ying blows your mind, but she's got absolutely, yeah, she has got some really fantastic shots. And the main thing, like I said, she knows when to use them. She knows how to piece them together, which is quite crucial. You can get players that can have all the skill in the world, have trick shots and deceptions coming out of their rear end, but if you don't know how to put it together in a constructive way, it can kind of fall apart, especially if a player can just get them back. You end up becoming a bit lost. But what Anmol Kharb has well is she has those skills, but she knows how to piece them together. Whether we're going to see more of her, again, it's always a difficult question. There's sometimes some players that I see and I'm just like, they've got every attribute ticked, and you're just like, yes, we're definitely going to see more of those. I do think a big thing I always see in players, and I know this isn't the only way you can be good, but it's becoming more and more of a must, is you must be, especially in singles, a physical specimen. The way women's singles is evolving, it's becoming faster and quicker. It's looking more and more like men's singles of, say, 10, 15, 20 years ago. We're starting to see players jump smash. We're starting to see the game just generally getting so much faster and much more physical. Obviously, to be able to compete with that, you need to be able to have that. And that's something that Anmol was going to have to work on. You know, she is only 18, so she's got room to grow. And I do think another thing is how... I know sometimes Indian athletes, I get on these videos, it happens, it's not just Indian, but I get almost every single video questions about India's women's singles future, or I even got a question about PV Sindhu, and she had withdrawn from these European legs. It's just India fans, I think, sometimes possibly expect too much. I think that's something that's not just, like I said, privy to Indian fans, but so as a result, although someone like Anmol Kharb won't get the attention of, say, if she was a Malaysian player or Indonesian player maybe, but she's still going to get a lot of attention on her. And so how does she handle that sort of situation? You know, because as she gets older, she's going to have great results like this, but then she's going to go through weeks where it's really hard to get results, especially as she's in that phase going from junior to senior. So it's going to be, it's difficult to predict how she is. But like I said, for me, what makes a player stand out, or what makes you really go yes, is usually a physical thing, which I know is maybe a little bit short-sighted. But for me, with Anmol, if she can improve her physicality, especially say in her defensive situations, because like I said, she's quite nimble on her feet, but not super sturdy and strong in defense. That I think obviously if she's going to come up consistently against, say, top 10 players, a bit like when she played Yamaguchi, you could kind of see the difference. But can Anmol Kharb push on and in the next, I don't know, 4 or 5 years really make a name for herself? She's definitely got a lot of attributes that I think will help her. So if I, again, compare her to another Indian player, I think we should compare her a little more to Saina Nehwal, not PV Sindhu. She's a little bit of a blend of the two, but more towards Nehwal, because Nehwal wasn't physically an amazing player, especially as she got older, injury issues, but she was a great tactician and she had great shots and she had a great fighting spirit and she played the game well. And I see Anmol Kharb as a modern day version of that. So yeah, interesting for me to see how she progresses. The last, well, this is the pair, because one of them is definitely not new, and that's Sapsiree Thinaah. We've seen her for many years. She's been one of the best mixed doubles players for the last decade. She is a former world champion. She has won, obviously, countless tournaments with her previous partner, Pakkapon Puvanukroh. Obviously, since the Paris Olympics, they've split, and she's had a few different partners. I think she partnered Jomko, which I was quite excited about originally, but that has kind of gone nowhere. And now she's with a new partner, Pakkapon Teiratsukun. I think I've pronounced that correctly. You can clearly mock me in the comments, but I'm going to call him Pakkapon. That's a little bit easier for me to pronounce quickly and consistently. But those two, so Sapsiree and Pakkapon, reached the semi-finals of the Arctic Open, which was a great result. And they actually beat a number of Chinese players. I think they beat, I'd like to say two Chinese pairs, possibly more en route to that semi-final, and then they ended up losing in 3 games to the pair that won it, Zhang Zhengbang and Wei Yaxin. So yeah, a really good tournament. It's actually the first semi-final for Sapsiree since splitting with Dichapon. So since the Paris Olympics, it's her first semi-final. So it's good to see her back. I'm actually quite excited by this pair, mainly because I think Pakkapon is definitely built for mixed doubles. The way that he plays, he's a left-hander. He's got an incredibly hard hit, actually, but he's got that kind of ability for me. It's like he's obviously quick in and off the body, but what he has that I see most really good mixed players have is that vision, the touch. He has lovely control and little deceptions. He's able to find little gaps in and around the front court, which I think is absolutely vital to be a world-class mixed doubles player. So yeah, no, he has everything kind of going for him. And I think obviously he is only 20 years old, I believe. So obviously he's doesn't quite have the experience, but maybe being able to play with Sapsiree, who has an abundance of experience. I hope they play together a little bit longer. I hope this isn't relatively long term, and I hope that Sapsiree can take on that role a little bit like what Dichapon has done for Sapsiree. Slightly different. Sapsiree did go into that partnership with a bit more experience than what Pakkapon's got, but Dichapon has clearly led that partnership and obviously nurtured and helped Sapsiree grow as a person and as a player. I hope Sapsiree does the same. I don't quite know what she's like off the court. I know she's got quite a big social media following and all that kind of stuff. So, and I know there's been some people saying that that's kind of why she hasn't been as good, or why even Dichapon and her split is she's been pulled into different directions and not fully focused on a badminton. That's just what I've heard. I'm not sure if it's 100% true. You can put your comments below and let me know what you think on that. But besides the point, it still doesn't get away from the fact that can Sapsiree be that leadership, be that experienced head and kind of guide Pakkapon. Like I said, I think with Pakkapon's skills and his ability, he's fast, he's powerful, he's left-handed, which I think always gives a little bit of an advantage. He's got great variation. He can find gaps. He's got pretty solid defense. He moves around the court well. He's also quite handy moving into the front of the court, actually. There's a few times, actually, within this partnership that leads on to something that I think might be a weakness in this pair. It's definitely a weakness at the Arctic Open. But, and so, like I said, it's something that Pakkapon's going to be doing a lot, and it's good that he is good at the front of the court. And the weakness is, so, for me, when Sapsiree, obviously mixed doubles, as we kind of know, the general formation is man at the back, woman at the front. You know, the male players generally got more power, so they're taking majority of the shots. They're setting up the lady at the front, and vice versa. The lady is there to play the nimble skills and stuff and set up the big attack from the back of the court. Now, obviously, we've seen pairs that are very good the other way around, and some pairs that we've seen that work best, Kim Won-ho and Jung Na-yun, almost worked better when it was the other way around. Obviously, we've seen Igarashi, and Watanabe when they were a pair. Igarashi has one of the best rear courts in the female game, in the mixed game, and so she was very useful at the back. Obviously, Watanabe being a men's doubles player was also good from the front, so they worked very well there. So yeah, no, there's been a few pairs that have worked well in that formation. But for me, obviously the main one is male at the back, female at the front. And when Sapsiree and Pakkapon were in that formation, they were very effective. Like I said, Pakkapon has a really fast attack, and he was able to hit very steep and varied angles, which added to that. There was a lot of times the hall at the Arctic Open was slow, and not many smashes would go through from the back, but Pakkapon was one of those players that was able to win points from that situation. So for me, when they're in that position, very good. And Sapsiree is incredibly gifted. She's always been a very talented player, very versatile. She's been good in all 3 disciplines. She's one of the only players I think that's won titles at senior level in all 3. So she sets up really well from the front. So when they start in that formation, they're very good. Where the issue is when Sapsiree gets pushed to the back, or when she's in defence, she tends to hang back. She doesn't really look to move forward, to rotate all that often. She obviously does do it a little bit, but there were so many times, and I think this was exposed a little bit in their loss in the semi-finals, was the two situations. So if they were able to get Sapsiree to the back, the Thai combination found it difficult to switch back, because I think Sapsiree would smash. If you watch her, most mixed players, female players, would smash and look to come forward, especially if their partner shifts out a little bit, basically giving them the space, giving them the straight line to come in. And you can see Pakkapon doing that, shifting out, allowing Sapsiree to move forward. But she'd see her, she'd attack and stay at the back, almost like a women's doubles player. So smash, stay there, smash, stay there. And so she was too easily to pin. And while she is no slouch from the back, she can hold her own. That's not a situation that's going to gift them lots of points or something that's going to be successful. It's something that you need to be able to do, and it's obviously you might have to play a few shots from the back in Sapsiree's shoes, but you should be looking to come forward and to rotate, especially if you've got the attacking prowess of Pakkapon potentially at the back. That was one. The other one was obviously when defense. Again, Sapsiree's defense is equally as good as Pakkapon's. It's really, really solid. Very, very strong. But again, obviously sometimes she would play the drive or the soft shot and then stay back. She wouldn't hit it and look to move forward again to either take the attack, turn it into an attacking situation for them, or to get them into that male Pakkapon at the back, Sapsiree at the front situation. So for me, I'd like to see that happen. I know that's always been, not necessarily been, Sapsiree's style. But I do think that's something that they're going to have to figure out. I think that could be a big kind of hole, a situation where opponents can use that to kind of counter them. Like I said, it's okay, 1 or 2 shots, but Sapsiree was hanging back. So they were fine when they were front and back already. So say they started in the formation of Pakkapon back, Sapsiree at the front. But if they found themselves the other way around, they were unable to transition and switch into the way all that often. And so for me, I think that was where they came a little bit unstuck. So yeah, those are the kind of 4 players, or 1 pair and 2 singles players, that I think had a really good breakthrough event at this week's Arctic Open. Moving on, I want to obviously now I'm kind of moving towards the winners. And I want to start with the women's doubles winners. I'm not going through all the finals, just some select ones that I think are worth talking about. And that is the first one I want to talk about, Pearly and Thinaah Muralitharan. Obviously, they won the title. I think this is like their 5th or 6th final this year. They're having an absolutely amazing 2025. They are world number 2s, which is a fantastic and a testament to the 2025 season they're having. Obviously, they've just had another fantastic win here. They had a pretty solid way through to the win as well. I think it was only in the semi-finals where they were pushed against, I can't remember their names, but a pair from Chinese Taipei. But what I want to talk about is that final, because it was a repeat of last year's final where I think it ended 26-24 in the third. So that was against Rin Iwanaga and Kei Nakanishi. This year, the Malaysians won in doubly quick time, 7-9. So even the Japanese total points wasn't even close to 1 game's worth of points. That's absolutely incredible. And what makes it even more incredible is that we saw, obviously, Pearly Tan's right thigh was heavily strapped, and Thinaah was left calf was heavily strapped. Although for Thinaah, her calf was strapped from round 1. I think for Pearly, I think that obviously was just for the final or as the tournament progressed. So yeah, what was the reason for Pearly and Thinaah to be so devastating in that final? I think there's a couple of reasons, and I think they're kind of linked to one another. If I start with the Japanese pair of Nakanishi and Iwanaga, like I said, I think there's 2 main reasons, and they're kind of closely linked. One was, I think Iwanaga and Nakanishi were just far too defensive. They started off the game trying to be their usual attacking counter style, but it quickly, for whatever reason, they end up just being a little bit too defensive. And maybe they just felt the sense on court earlier than what I sensed it watching it, that they were like, this is not our day. Pearly and Thinaah playing too well. And maybe there was a little bit of just that doubt. And whenever that happens, that can very easily lead to a match getting away from you. But I think the main reason, obviously this is added on top, is that for me, the successfulness in the doubles disciplines. I'll talk about this in the men's doubles, but it was key in women's doubles as well, because the conditions at the Arctic Open were quite slow. I think to be successful, obviously you need to have a solid, pretty solid defense. But when you're attacking, you need to be able to attack with plenty of variation. I saw this week far more cross-court smashes, slices, crazy angles, etc. Because I think because it was slow, it's obviously easier to defend. So if you were too basic in your attack, generally the pairs, especially the latter stages, could defend really, really well. So to be able to break that down, you had to take that risk. You had to flirt on that line of creativity and danger, but mixing, obviously, balancing it with patience and not giving away, obviously, too many mistakes. And that's quite a fine balance. And I do think the way that Pearly and Thinaah play, with that kind of fast rotation, they do like to play a lot of unorthodox shots at times, and I think that worked really, really well for them. And I think that's another reason is Iwanaga and Nakanishi aren't really that kind of pair. They tend to like to counter with the straight lines, the soft blocks, the drives down the line. And when they attack, they're very formulaic. They're not a pair that suddenly does these wild shots or does it. I'm sure they can, but it's just not really within them, whereas it's much more natural for Pearly and Thinaah. So Pearly and Thinaah were able to break down and create these different opportunities. And obviously on top of that, Pearly and Thinaah, especially Pearly, has one of the hardest smashes in women's doubles, which obviously gives them that extra bit of firepower and ability to break down defenses even in those slower conditions. And then I think on top of that, Pearly and Thinaah have a very good defense. And so Iwanaga and Nakanishi, because they weren't able to play with that more variation and unsettle the Malaysians' defense, they just simply couldn't create chances. They couldn't get through them. Pearly and Thinaah could just, if they wanted to, just defend easy. But then when they got the attack, not only did they have a bit more firepower, but they had the ability to be creative. And I saw that in Pearly and Thinaah throughout the whole week. And it seemed to be very, very effective, especially in these slower conditions. And I think I'll talk about this in the men's doubles, but what makes Pearly and Thinaah very good at this as well as something that you have to have a really good understanding of each other. Because if you're playing more, say, more basic, or, majority of your smashes need to go straight or to the center, okay? That's quite easy to follow as a partnership even if you're relatively new, because it can be quite set in stone. But if you're playing cross courts here and cross courts there and drops and slices and all sorts of variety that's kind of going, it's hard to kind of follow. The only way you're going to be able to follow that is if you have a really innate understanding of each other. So I'm pretty sure Pearly and Thinaah, obviously they've been partners for a long time. They know each other really well. And so I'm pretty sure that when Pearly's at the front, and Thinaah's got the attack, she almost instinctively knows where Pearly's going to hit it, even if it's a bit of a out there shot. And so she's already looking for that. So they link up really well, even when they're playing almost like it seems just lots of shots going all over the court. They were still very much able to kind of follow each other. And that, to me, obviously they play that way, so they've obviously got lots of practice at it, but I think there's a really innate understanding and this kind of bond between the two that was quite a key thing in their success. So yeah, no, what a fantastic win. What a fantastic week, actually, for Pearly and Thinaah. Like I said, I think it's their 5th or 6th final this year, so credit to them. Next, I want to talk about Chou Tien Chen. The 35-year-old, absolutely amazing. Honestly, how is this guy still playing at this level? He seems to be getting better and better of age. I know there was an interview with Chou Tien Chen on a video thing where he said he wants to play till he's 40. And I remember thinking, no chance, mate. Who's going to be able to play to their 40? Well, it seems Chou Tien Chen might do. I think someone actually wrote me a question, just saying, talk about Chou Tien, eternal Chen. And I think that's a pretty good way. Actually, Chou obviously won the men's singles event here at the Arctic Open. And with it, I think according to someone, and I'm going to take their word for it, it does seem like it's correct, he's now become the oldest men's singles winner of an event of this level or above. I think he's taken that mantle from Lee Chong-wei, who was, let me just come here. Yeah, here. Lee Chong-wei won the 2018 Malaysian Open. God, I can't believe that's 7 years ago. when he was aged 35 years and 250 days old. 54 days old, 254 days old. And Chou Tien Chen is 35 years and 277 days old. So there, he is the oldest player to win an event, Super 500 or above. Was it a World Tour event when? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Obviously, Super Series, which was before the World Tour, any event that was called a Super Series would have been the equivalent of Super 500 or above. So, what a fantastic, fantastic achievement. And for me, another thing, obviously, is quite incredible. I saw a photo of Chou Tien Chen after winning, and his foot looked in absolutely disgusting shape. He had tape on it, but it was like a bloody sock. It was so. Any of you have played and you've got blisters or blood blisters, that's painful. I've played a few tournaments with blood blisters and it's incredibly uncomfortable. So the fact that not only is he 30, almost 36 actually, winning an event at this level, but he did so with blisters, that's quite incredible. And actually, also you can't say that the player that he beat is the world silver medalist, the current former world champion, world number 2. Is it world number 2? Again, I'm forgetting. I'm pretty sure he is. No, world number 3. Sorry, Kunlavut Vititsan. Someone actually that I thought might be quite difficult to beat at the Arctic Open because it is a little bit slower. And Kunlavut tends to do quite well in he can play well in most conditions. He's incredibly skillful, but the slower ones, where if there is a weakness to Kunlavut, is when he comes up against an opponent that can play incredibly fast and incredibly attacking, a little bit like we have seen Chou Tien Chen play over the last couple of years. But I thought that with the slower conditions, that it would be quite an interesting battle as to whether Chou could play fast enough or whether Kunlavut would be able to suck enough of the speed out. And actually, that's kind of the way the match went. The first game, Chou Tien Chen came out incredibly fast, incredibly attacking. He was playing at an absolutely ridiculous pace. But then in the second game, there might have been some slight differences in the drift in different ends. But Kunlavut, you can noticeably start to play with higher clears. When he was trying to hit down, he would play it with slightly less pace. So whenever, basically, he sucked every bit of speed out. Obviously, then he would put it in when he's in a good position. He knew that he couldn't just defend because then it becomes a war of attrition. And Chou's also pretty good at that game. So obviously, Kunlavut, I'm not saying that he just kind of sat back and did absolutely nothing. But in certain situations, I think where, for example, there's a few times in the first game where Kunlavut would be slightly, not off balance, but slightly not in a great time position, would get suckered into playing a little bit fast, and Chou was able to kind of maintain speed or build on that speed. But in the second, Kunlavut in those situations was able to take the speed out of the rally and only put it in when he was in a really good position. So when he was underneath the shuttle and he could really attack and control what was happening next, then we saw Kunlavut play with a lot of speed and a lot of attacking prowess. But in all the other situations, I saw him kind of take out and make the game a far more bigger court game. And then in the third, I think it was a bit of a battle of both. But I have to give credit to Chou again, because when it got to like 15 all in the third game, Kunlavut was coming back, the intensity and the level went up another notch, and Chou obviously was able to come out on top. So yeah, no, it was a really interesting battle actually, that men's singles. It was a close match, it was entertaining, but it was that battle between Chou trying to play with speed, play in a very attacking and proactive game, and Kunlavut trying to not allow that to happen when he's not in the best of positions, and look to use it when he was, being very much more methodical about his approach. Whereas Chou was quite happy to go all out. He knew that he is a faster player. He was willing to kind of do that even if he was in a slightly disadvantageous, in a slightly worse position. Whereas Kunlavut was being a little bit more kind of thoughtful about it. But yeah, no. Absolutely fantastic performance by Chou. He is just getting better and better. I actually want to, before I move on to the next final, talking about Chou Tien Chen, I actually had someone message me on Instagram, and it was a long message. And the guy even apologized for sending me such an essay, but it was an interesting read, because he's a big fan of Chou Tien Chen. And basically what he said was, he had a bit of frustrations towards Chou, almost, because the way that Chou Tien Chen has been playing, say, these last couple of years, I think definitely since he's come back from cancer, which is another thing to this ridiculous story, that Chou Tien Chen is a cancer survivor. So the fact that he's come back from that and just his fit, Chou, my hat. I'm tipping it to you. But anyway, back to what this guy said. Chou Tien Chen's style has changed. So before the pandemic or even before the Tokyo Olympics, probably when you'd argue that Chou was in his best form, best shape. He was world number 2, reaching All England finals, winning Indonesia Open, all that kind of stuff. You would definitely say that his style was more rally based. How many times I can recall commentators going, why could Chou not take it that little bit earlier? He'd always let the shuttle drop and he'd be doing lots of big double actions and all this kind of stuff and playing a lot of physical game. And, he's got a reputation based off that for a guy that loves to play 3-game matches. He's still got that reputation. He still does play them, but he played a far more rallying style. But what this guy said was he really wished that the way Chou plays now, which is far more aggressive, far more attacking, he wished that he had done it back then. Because whilst he is still physically amazing now, I don't think he is as good as he was back then. And what made it more so for this guy was that he saw matches. I can remember a China Open when he played Momota, or a Denmark Open also playing Momota, where Chou felt he can't do the rally style and beat Momota, so we saw a far more attacking game, and it was absolutely amazing, like really, really good. So I just wanted to put that out there because I thought it was really interesting what the guy said, and I agree with him. I really like what Chou's doing now. I love the way that he's playing. I'm a big fan of attacking badminton, and I think it's something that he has to do because as you get older, he doesn't want to be playing long, drawn-out matches. But I do sometimes think, like this guy, what could Chou have had even better results? Could he have maybe won that Asian Games final that he was in, or won that All England, or won a world title, or all that kind of stuff, had he implemented the way that he plays now with the slightly younger version? I know obviously it's pointless really debating it too much because you'll never know and it's already gone, and let's focus on the present. But I thought as Chou won this event and the way that he played at the Arctic Open was so good, and the way he's been playing, I think, has been really, really good, and a testament to him as a person and a player. But I thought it was an interesting observation that guy sent me, and I thought, why not bring it up here? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, actually. Again, we can't go back and change the future, of course, but is anyone else in the same boat that the way that Chou played, which was far more, generally speaking, passive, but in his prime years, but now he's playing more attacking in his later years, do you not wish that you could have seen the Chou approach now with the younger Chou body? But still, obviously, he's still very successful now, and I still think he's clearly got a few more years, maybe 5 more years, maybe he will reach that 40. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up. But again, congratulations, Chou, absolutely amazing. Make sure you get those blisters to heal. And okay, so the last one I want to do before I get on to some of your questions is the men's doubles final. And I actually want to talk about both pairs. Now, obviously, I am English, as you know, and an English pair, Ben Lane and Shaun Vendy, won. So obviously, you're probably expecting me to talk mainly about them, and I will. I will talk a lot about Ben Lane and Shaun Vendy. But I do want to put it out there that whilst I was really happy for them, and it's a great result for English badminton, I'm not going to be someone that's like massively patriotic and be like, yeah, and in England, come on. Yeah, obviously, I want them to do well. Like, I always want to see English players do well, but I'm not going to be someone here that's like, I don't know how to put it. But anyway, let's put it this way. Talking about this section, I'm not going to overlook the pair they beat, because I think there's actually, so they did lose, obviously, but there's some really positive things that I want to say about them as well. So about this final, I want to follow on because I mentioned this in the women's doubles final section, and that is that obviously with the slower conditions, if you attack too basically or you were just too direct in your approach, it wasn't overly successful. You needed to be able to flirt that line between not giving away mistakes and being patient. You can't go too crazy. But you need to do it with playing more out there, more cross-court smashes, more slice drops, more stop drops, lots more variation. You needed to be able to, your opponents couldn't settle into the defense, because if they were settled with the slower shuttles or the slower conditions, it did look like something like the shuttle was like a parachute out there. You just weren't going to get anywhere unless you'd have like Ranky ready level of power. But even then, pairs of this level would get used to that and would be able to just defend. And I actually think that's something that both these pairs did really well throughout. And again, what I said about Pearly Tan and Thinaah Muralitharan, they have a really good understanding of each other because they've been a pair for a long time. And you can tell they are very close off court. And I'm not surprised the men's doubles final was between two pairs that also share that, because Ben Lane and Sean Vendy, they've grown up together. They were members of the same club growing up. They obviously played together for a long time. Oh no, they weren't members of the same club, but obviously they were played within Milton Keynes a lot. I can't actually remember. They might have been different junior clubs, but anyway, they've known each other for a long time. They've grown up through the junior days. They've been partners for a long time. And I think they even admitted that they've got one of the closest relationships on the world tour. It's quite a bold claim to make, because there's quite a few pairs I would say that are in that boat, one of them being the pair that they played against. But they definitely have a very close bond, and I think that instinctively know what each other's going to do before they've done it. So when you're playing with a style where you are playing a little bit more unpredictable and lots of variation, obviously that's going to be a major factor and something that's going to be quite important. And obviously Aaron Char and Sohiek played together for a long time. They know each other really well. They do seem pretty close off the court as well. And so they also have that understanding. And in all honesty, it was incredibly close. What it boiled down to for me was, I talk about that fine line between being creative and doing things with the shuttle all the time, but also being patient and not making mistakes. Just at the end, the Malaysians tipped over too much to the mistakes. There was a few shots, they start maybe going for a bit too much or whatever, but they made mistakes doing the things that it's easy in hindsight to go, you shouldn't have done that. You should have played the basic shot. But playing the more creative shots was what was working and what was needed. So it's hard to criticize, but they made too many mistakes in those situations right at the end, and that's where Ben Lane and Sean Vendy were able to get that little run. I can't remember what the score was exactly, but you're looking, it was even up to 14-15, and then the English pair were able to pull away, and obviously they built up enough a lead that they were able to close it out. So for me, I don't need to go through the whole match. I think that summarizes it pretty well. There's obviously lots of little things going on here and there and lots of things, but to generalize it, the doubles events was all about being creative, whether it's like the cross smashes or just you needed to play your first attack as a slice or a softer one to get a slightly shorter lift, doing something to kind of, you couldn't allow a pair to settle into defense. And I thought Ben Lane and Sean Vendy did that really well, because Aaron Char and Sohiek, being Malaysian, have a very good defense. So if you didn't play that way, they weren't going to get through. That was one of the things I was quite interested about this final. But yeah, no, it came down to just a few key errors at the end for the Malaysians. So sticking with Ben and Sean for a little bit. Obviously, this is, like I said, a huge win for English badminton, because this is the first time an English player or pair has won a tournament at this level since the 2020 Denmark Open, the Super 750, when Chris Langridge and Marcus Ellis won the title. But, and this is not to take anything away from Chris and Marcus, because that was a great win, but if you remember, that 2020 Denmark Open wasn't very well attended, because it was like the only tournament in the second half of 2020. So obviously there was a lot of top pairs missing, whereas obviously at this Arctic Open, not all the top pairs are there, but there was a number of top ones in attendance. So if you go back, if you say discount that 2020 Denmark Open, you have to go back another 5 years to the Super Series finals, when the Adcocks won the mixed doubles title there. So it's been 10 years. That's quite incredible since we've seen an English player or pair win a tournament of this level. We've seen like pairs like Marcus Ellis and Lauren Smith win, I think they won in Thailand, but that was a Super 300. So this is Super 500, which would have been a Super Series level prior to 2018. So that's quite an incredible stat. So like I said, it's a massive win. And obviously, personally for Ben and Sean, this was their first win of this level, obviously, because we haven't had any since they've been a pair. But also it marks a really nice comeback, because only 4 months ago, Ben Lane had surgery on his right ankle to remove excess bone. And I know that they kind of came back rather hastily for the World Championships, and they weren't quite ready. And they've then since then had some good results, some good performances. And obviously this is a continuation of that. So really good to see not just an English player or pair, English pair, back on top at this level. But it's really good for Ben and Sean. And again, with their first win, can they build on this? Can they move forward? They did say that they're going to, obviously these results don't come around often, so they are going to celebrate. I'm not quite sure what that means for them, whether it's a few cheeky beers or a full-on night out. I don't know. Obviously, they've got Denmark Open and French Open to focus on. But if they were to do terribly in Denmark because they really wanted to celebrate this win, then I wouldn't hold that against them. I don't think anyone should, because I think I've seen a lot of top players look back and they kind of don't really celebrate the big wins in their career, and this is certainly one for Ben and Sean. So, moving on, talking about Aaron Chou and Seo Yik. Obviously, they're going to be disappointed that they weren't able to convert this final into a win. They probably were the favourites. I know they have had some struggles with Ben and Sean. Even recently, they've lost to them. They still held a positive head-to-head, 6-4, but and so as a result, being world number twos, they would be kind of the favourites. Actually, I keep saying world number twos and then going, actually, are they? Yes, they are. I was right. They're world number twos by quite some margin, actually. But okay, so back to them. What I want to say about them, obviously, other than like I said, the end of the third game, their errors were massively costly. But there's two things that I want to say about them. One is, with the way that the conditions played, like I said a few times throughout this video, they were quite slow. So with them, with obviously their original style and being more, this is a style that a lot of Malaysian pairs have used in the past, is quite defensive. Aaron Chou and Seo Yik have a very solid defense. And I thought that maybe they might revert back to that being in this slow haul, but actually that wasn't the case. And I think that's a testament to obviously Harry IP and his more Indonesian approach and what he's done to a lot of the Malaysian pairs. They've made them more attacking. You hear a lot of the no lift style, and it's something that obviously they do lift, but in general they're not looking to lift, they're looking to attack more. And it was really good to see Aaron Chou and Seo Yik still doing that, even though the conditions were not necessarily favourable for that style. So that's one thing. I really was very impressed with that. The other one is Seo Yik has massively improved his front court, and I think that's been a massive key. I'm pretty sure I said this before, in their recent success and their ability to become world number twos. So the reason I say that is, obviously, I think if you have both players in a pair that can play equally well from both formations, it means there's no obvious gap or obvious formation that you can get a pair into and create a weakness. And I think that's something in this day and age we're seeing it with Kim Won-ho and Seo Jay. They're equally strong in both ways. And I think that's the way men's doubles is going. It's moving away from, you need a clear rear and a clear front. I think both players in a pair you need to be able to play both ways to be successful. And Aaron Chou and Seo Yik, with Seo Yik's improvement in the front court, is definitely helping that. And the reason I think it's good is I think Aaron Chou's rear court, especially in a hall like this, where, like I said, creativity is massively important, he's far more effective and stronger from the back. Seo Yik's a real workhorse player. He is skillful. I don't want this to come across like I'm saying he's not skillful, but obviously if you compare him to Aaron Chou with ability to play all sorts of shots, I'm sure even Seo Yik would admit that Aaron Chou is above him in that. But I like the fact that, so in a result, like in a hall like this, Aaron Chou being able to use his drops, his slices and all that stuff, obviously allows them to be more effective in the attack. And obviously Seo Yik's improved his front court to set him up, but also to kind of intercept and to win points from there. And actually, I speak about Seo Yik not being as skillful. I actually think that he's developed a lot more in that area as well, a lot more creativity. He was always someone that was really hardworking, really basic, and just did things he did his job well. And now he still does that, actually even better. That's the last thing I actually want to talk about. But I actually started to see he's gaining more confidence when he's moving to the front. He can challenge, do stuff like, he's not just coming like this. He was something to do that, and then he will change direction. He has that ability now. He's adding that layer into his game, and that is absolutely fantastic. And I think for obviously for them as a pair, for more future success, I think obviously they can continue to develop that. And the last thing about them, and this is something that I've noticed more so with Aaron Char, because Sohyok's never really been that. He's always been quite strong on this. Is that physically they've both really stepped up. They look so much more physically well prepared. Aaron Char, he's a stockier player. I think when he retires, we might see him balloon a little bit, but he's definitely got himself physically into great shape for himself. And Sohyok has done the same. I mean, obviously Sohyok's always been a little bit, he's been taller, slimmer. They're different builds, but you can see both of them physically have got stronger, faster, fitter, sharper. They really are. I could sing their praises for a long time. I think they've done a lot of things. They've really progressed their game. Obviously, they've got physically better. So Sohyok's front court and creativity has improved. Obviously, they're applying Harry's more attacking-minded tactics really well. They're taking to that. They've managed to put that into their game pretty quickly. And so I think we're going to see more of them. And, that's why sometimes when I see comments like what's happening to Malaysia men's doubles, because obviously we had Aaron Char and Sohyok do really well in like Singapore, Malaysia, those kind of tournaments. And then they had a little bit of a blip for the Worlds. They didn't have the best World Championships. And now even people now are saying because they lost to Lane and Vendy, they're questioning, and it's like, come on, they're still doing really well. And you've got to see the bigger picture that their game is, whenever I see them, I think they're always improving as a pair. So, no, that's the last thing I'll say about them. And actually, that moves on nicely to the Q&A. I got a few questions, not as many as I have done in the past. Maybe there's just less interest in the Arctic Open. Maybe there's less interest in me. Who knows? But there were a few, and I want to just talk about them on some. So, I kind of already touched on these two, but let me quickly do them. Is Chou Tien Chen the Kryptonite for Kunlavut? I wouldn't say necessarily the Kryptonite. I think like some people have said, Kunlavut can be a little susceptible to players that can play incredibly fast and attacking badminton, and the way that Chou Tien Chen approaches badminton these days is precisely that. Kunlavut obviously is incredibly skillful and has the ability, like he did for the most part, and what he did throughout the week actually really well, because he didn't drop a game until that final was. He could suck speed out of a game really well and then put it back in when he's in control. He has that ability to kind of dictate. But like I said to him about Kunlavut after the Worlds, I do think if he can improve his physicality just by a little bit, just doesn't have to be like super shredded. He doesn't have to be built like Chou Tien Chen. But I do think if he could lose a little bit of weight, get a little bit leaner, a little bit stronger in that respect, my God, then I don't think players that can play that style would be as much of a problem for him. I think he would be really difficult to beat. Aaron Char and Sohyok regained their form from the Southeast Asian season. So this is, I've already just literally touched on that, so maybe I don't really need to answer this, but that's what I'm talking about. In Malaysian Masters, Thailand Masters, Singapore Open, and then Indonesia Open, those 4 tournaments, I think they reached 3 of those finals and won 2 of them. And so obviously that was a really good tour, but don't suddenly go, they need to do that for it just to be a successful season or a successful European leg. Don't think they need to go win Denmark, final of France, just to be deeming this European tour or section of the World Tour as a success for them. I think you need to be a bit more open-minded. Men's doubles, the men's disciplines are really open. They are world number 2s. And like I said, I think they're really improving or have improved many aspects of their game. And I think, yes, they're going to have weeks where, for whatever reason, whether it's fatigue, whether it's their opponents playing really well, maybe it's just a bad day, maybe, I don't know, something. There's always so many factors that go into whether a pair can win or lose. So obviously that can affect them. Of course, I don't know really how to answer that. I kind of already have. I just think that sometimes people are a little bit expect like too much and are a little bit unreasonable with their expectations, or they just, I think, a little bit, yeah. Okay, moving on. Is Akane Yamaguchi throwing a message across women's singles that she is back to her absolute best? Well, she definitely has been sending a message. Obviously won the world title, then beat An Seong in the Korea Open final. Sorry, not the China Masters, Korea Open. So that was a big win to beat An Seong, the world number 1, in her backyard. That was a really impressive, and the way she did it, that was impressive. And obviously here at the Arctic Open, I didn't talk about her too much. Didn't talk about her at all actually in this video so far, because She did obviously have. She was kind of expected to win, and looking at the draw, I thought really the only player that might be able to beat her if they met was actually Ratchanok. Ratchanok lost in the semi-finals to Busanan, who gave Yamaguchi a really good match. Actually, I was quite impressed by Busanan in that final. But is she throwing a message across women's singles? I think, yeah, she's definitely showing to everyone that she's back. She does look fitter, she looks stronger, she looks more confident. I think when Yamaguchi's always doing really well, is obviously you can tell that she looks comfortable to move around her head. She also attacks more, and she just has that little spring in her step. Just the little things you tend to notice. For me, it's when she's attacking. That was what won her when she won her first world title, or when she defended it and she was winning. She was like the world number one in like 2022, that kind of period. It was what she added. She added that attacking layer into her game a bit more. And we're starting to see that again. And I know that the reason why that stopped was mainly injuries. So hopefully that she can stay injury free up until, well, I hope she never has another major injury again. But is she throwing a message? Yeah, I do think so. So yeah, that's the last question, guys. Like I said, not too many, but mainly for the fact that the questions were asking mainly about the things I've already spoken about. So as always, I'd love you to get in the comments. Let me know what you think of the video. Let me know what you think what I said. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? Can you add more context? Because I don't want to be someone, and I don't think I am, that if I say something and then suddenly someone goes, yes, but Ben, that's because, and then adds a certain story, and it kind of changes, it adds more context to it, and I'm like, oh, if that suddenly changes my opinion, oh, I've seen that in a different light, I'm happy to admit that, honestly. And likewise, if I don't agree with someone in the comments, I'm more willing to kind of back my own opinions up. But that's what I love, what I absolutely love about the comment section of my videos, is there's usually a really nice conversation. We can agree, we can disagree, there's a back and forth, people just putting their opinions out there. I think it's really nice. We don't get too many hateful comments or people just being rude for being rude's sake. I think sometimes people might misconstrue what I'm saying or misinterpret it for whatever reason. And when they do, I do try to kind of get to the bottom of it. But yeah, no, crux of it is I love the community that these videos have been making. I think it's good for badminton. I think it's nice. And yeah, please do add to it in this video. So please do like the video. I'm going to sound like a proper YouTuber. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment, and yeah, I will see you in the next one. It might be a little later in the week. That's not because I won't be watching it, but I actually am going to be away with my wife for over a weekend. We're going away for a short little break, but I will be watching the badminton. My wife likes watching badminton too, so we won't miss out. But it's more like the filming afterwards, to film and edit these videos. So whether the one on the Denmark Open might come a little bit late, but it will be coming. Don't worry, I will be doing it. So yeah, until that episode, guys, again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.